cases, we're talking about less than 1% of cases end up in a dispute,
Yep.
realistically. But when they do, it's quite intimidating for people anyway to get into it. But as there's loads of brokers that have come into the market over the last few years, I mean, we've seen a lot of people who become very successful, but some are still small businesses. They are not going to be able to ride that out with the court fees that they have to pay when they get into a dispute. So as the land department, who obviously want to encourage new agencies coming through as well, it's just an unrealistic expectation that agents can act as escrow, and then you could get on to like the whole what is the escrow thing that people are doing? There's a couple of agents that are doing it, not agents, like law firms doing it.
They're saying that they're escrow agents.
It's absolutely useless. But again, it's achieved nothing. It's not. It hasn't.
They're saying they've got a license. Some of these companies are saying that they've got a license.
I think they have a license to hold it, but they still can't release it.
No.
So what has that actually achieved? You know, a lot of announcements that go out in the press, I think, especially like when there was a video, somebody in the land department had said, you no longer need NOCs, and everyone got really, really excited about it. It's just not there in reality. Like the blockchain technology is there. It's not being used as much as it could be. And I think that people then go into this process with an unrealistic conception that this is all very digitalized. And unfortunately, you'll find very quickly it's just not.
Do you think, going back onto the checks, Jess, do you think it will ever come in where there is a similar procedure as what developers do, where the money gets put into an actual escrow?
Yeah.
And once the sale has been transferred, that money either gets allocated back to the buyer, just a holding check, or it gets distributed to the seller. Do you think that will happen? Or do you think the land departments are not going to want to have that headache on their hands?
It did happen very briefly in COVID, and they just didn't have the capability for it. But that was because it was more of like a stopgap, quick kind of system. It didn't work. It didn't work at all. It was, in fact, it was a disaster. People waited for their money for so many weeks and they didn't own the property anymore. So it felt very much like a highly uncomfortable situation that you'd ever want to be in. But that's where it has to get to. It has to get to that point. The reason why managers' checks work is because it's an instantaneous, I give you this, you give me that. And that's how it works. But we have to get to a point in the market where somebody is trusted enough, whether that be like they did with when the land department gave the system to the trustees, like that kind of situation. We need to get there, because until we do, we are still going to be in this quite archaic process that still involves checks. And even with developers, so when you buy like on a post-handover payment plan, you still have to give these checks. So if you're not here and you're an overseas investor, how are you going to give them?
But that's only with some developers though, isn't it?
Yeah. Not all of them are doing it, but a lot of them will need them. And then how do you get them back?
How would you change it then? So let's say checks are just, I'm sure we're in agreement, they're so archaic.
They've got to go.
It's ridiculous, whether it be issuing a 10% security deposit or issuing post-handover payment checks. It's just archaic. Let's say with the Form Fs, I believe that we have made strides with the Form F because of the security and the elements of lock-in as such. But then what about payments? Because like you said before, a lot of companies that are coming into the table, a lot of real estate companies don't have the clout, don't have the financial capabilities of going into dispute with a buyer or going into dispute with us. And by the way, it's the last thing that you said before, I think it's 1% rate over a year's period. But how do you think, or what do you think they will implement to avoid, let's say, issuing checks? Or what do you think they'll do moving forward?
I think it has to be appointed escrowees. And I think that I'm not talking about giving it to private law firms. I don't think they would do that. I think it would be something very similar to how they gave the power out to the trustee officers. And I think that there would be maybe escrowees that are partially government owned, where the funds are actually secured in escrow. And all of the tech is there. I think they just need to build it out. I think it's more than possible.
But what about when it falls into a dispute? What happens then? Is it stay? By the way, is it a cleared funds, or is it just held? Or will it be a cleared 10%, or will it just held like it is now?
I think it's important to have some kind of buy-in from the buyer, because I think the unified has really achieved that for the seller. So you know that the seller's committed, they can't resell it. And the buyer, yes, they have committed to those contractual terms, but that check serves as a psychological purpose. That's all it's actually really doing. That you are psychologically invested that you've given this 10% check. But whether it would be actually cleared funds, that might upset the banks who need your 25% deposit in their account. There are so many factors to look at it. But I think ultimately we have to move away from this idea of any kind of direct buyer to seller payments with managers' checks, and it has to come into some kind of escrow.
Why do you think, going to go completely off topic, why do you think there's no licensing for conveyancing when it's probably, I think it's the most important part of our job? A, it gets us paid. B, you've got, well, a lot of companies now have got designated conveyancing companies or internal conveyancing. And they know the ins and outs of the process, the procedure and everything else. Whereas brokers are there to sell houses. And why do you think there's no licensing for it? Because we've campaigned for so long and we're just getting...
Yeah, I agree. And the land department obviously know that it exists, and that's what many people operate as. I think that there's a very idealistical view that's taken of how the process works. I think that what is in sort of the rear in guidelines and in the law isn't actually the reality of what happens in a day-to-day transaction. And I think that it would take a period of long consultation with somebody like us who've been doing this and operating for so long, maybe even one of the law firms, a period of consultation with the government, and we work it out from there. Because I think it's just this idea that, we have the Unified Form F, you get an ENOC, you settle the mortgage, you go to the trustee office. It's all linked. And that's a lovely idea. And I think that idea hasn't quite been fully executed yet, that things are that straightforward. You also haven't taken into account that there are individuals with motivations, their own egos, their own ideas of, I've sold this too cheap, I've paid too much for this. Well, I thought I was getting this. All of these elements, it's not as straightforward, and it never will be, as just a transactional level. So right. I think that they haven't got there yet with fully licensing conveyances, because I just don't think they feel that the process is where it actually is in reality.
What I don't understand, and I've said this and we've spoke so many times on this, is why isn't everything, obviously the central bank control everything. Yeah. And you've got the land department. Why aren't NOCs done the same time? Why isn't the blocking done the same time? Why aren't liability letters, which is when the seller applies for outstanding balance on his mortgage? Why aren't these all set out and everything's the same?
Oh, honestly, for me, I could go on ranting about this for days. This is going to end up like Jess and Marc's rant podcast. But for me, I think it comes down to an element of control, because there are so many stakeholders in this. So it makes sense for me. Like, for example, I was just saying to you before about that mortgages, say we've settled a seller's loan. That's now cleared in central bank. That's a government operational system. The land department is a government system. Why am I then waiting 14 working days for a piece of paper to come from that bank that I give to the land department to say this mortgage is cleared? That should just already be in the land department system. That loan is no longer there, and therefore it's open for transfer. For me, that's simple. But there's got to be like somebody in IT in the land department probably thinking, wow, she literally has no idea what she's talking about. But from a logistical perspective, you have to. And it makes total sense. But there's so much of this that we could go at. I mean...
But surely they must be speaking to each other, Jess. The banks must be speaking to the land department. The land department speaking to the banks and vice versa. It just would make so much more sense.
To come back to the why, I think that they still have this process. I think it's control. I think that the banks like to have to say, yes, we have been cleared, we have been paid. I don't think they like to rely on a system, to be honest, because that can be the only reason that you are giving your effective NOC for that property to now be open and sold. It's their final say so that, yes, we have all been fully paid up and I'm ready to allow you to transfer this property over to somebody else. It has to be, because there's no other reason that I can think of. It has to be wanting to retain control in case they are missing any kind of funds.
But surely to God, if they want to gain control and keep control, if it is a one size fits all, and it is that happens then and this happens then, as soon as you get everything just falls into place.
Yeah.
Surely then there'll be, because we've had cases, Jess, whereby a loan's being dispersed or loans gets dispersed and it might take 3 or 4 months before the case transfers to where the buyer, it goes into the new buyer's name. And the buyer is paying 3 or 4 months of monthly installments when it's just like, how can this happen?
Yeah.
It shouldn't
get that far along, but it does happen. And I've even got, there's one bank in particular at the moment who have decided to start telling their clients when they come in to sign the final offer letter, which really is one of the very first things that you need to do as a buyer. And often buyers will have a misconception that I'm ready now, like I've done my bit. And that's just not the case, because this isn't about you doing your section. This is about a whole process that needs to come together. So you being ready, you're not, because without the other side ready, nobody is. So there's this conception that, well, I've done my bit, I've used all of this time of the contract, and now I'm finally ready to go. No, we still have the other side that we still have to do, but we have to go to an extent. A lot of it has to go one by one as well, which can be frustrating. But we have a bank at the moment that's literally getting their clients in and saying, we can transfer tomorrow. What time do you want to do it? And it's absolutely absurd, because if I then have the buyers coming back to me, well, why aren't you ready? Well, nobody's ready because the deal is not ready to be transferred. And they're being misinformed by a bank that are saying, yeah, we're ready now. You're actually not. You've still got to settle the seller's loan, get an NOC, get clearance documents, and actually go to transfer. It's just not right to be doing it.
Do you know, when we're talking here, I'm just thinking, I think we said before, I don't know whether it was on camera, but do you think, apart from the blocking process, anything has evolved with the after sales process?
Well, do you know the blocking process? I actually don't think it's all that. It's very hard to do.
But what I mean is the elements of security is there though, isn't it? Because if you remember, Jess, before the blocking process, if I was settling let's say you had 2 million dirhams on
cash buyers, 100%.
Yeah.
Finance to finance.
Or finance to finance. I don't at all. But cash to finance, a cash buyer to a finance seller, it used to be, I'll settle your loan. You give me, let's say my loan is 2 million dirham. You give me a check for 2 million dirham, which is absolutely worthless because you don't have 2 million dirhams. And it was like 14 days before the original documents, which is the title deed, would be released back to, it was the seller, but the buyer would hold a security for the title deed. Nothing's really changed apart from that.
Well, I think
blocking process,
lots of little things have that we probably take for granted. So although I am here going, we need to change this, and please can we go and knock on the land department's door? There are a few things. I think the main one is I don't know why we still go to transfers when you can do a remote power of attorney to give someone power of attorney to represent me in person. So I can give this remotely. I can grant you permission remotely on a video call. That's where we are with the technology with the notary. But then, so I'm avoiding like all of those attestations all over the world, which is crazy. So we do that, but I'm giving you that POA to still go there in person. So it's like we take a little step forward here, but I still don't have you here. The other thing is the unified, of course, you sign it digitally. So you get the SMS link. So buyer, seller signs like this, no actual signatures. But then I go to the developer and they say, oh, that's not signed as per their passport. I'm rejecting your whole NOC. So in some ways...
Is that specific developers or is that...
Yeah, I mean, I won't go through the name and shame of developers, but there's a lot of them still doing it. And you think, well, why aren't we using something like Adobe, like the blockchain signatures, like with... like we use Signable, but what is the Adobe one? I can't remember.
What was it called? We used to use it beforehand.
Is it Sign Now? I know. Anyway, I think it's actually more popular than Signable. I think even Google have them. Mm. They are literally verifiable on blockchain that you have signed it. It's more verifiable than me having signed it by hand because nobody witnessed you sign that. It's come from a scan and it's gone into, somebody's inbox that's printed it off and gone to Nikhil or whatever it is. So why are developers rejecting this? What is it about the legislation that is making them uncomfortable with having these digital signatures? We've got to get there because the world is there. I mean, clients will actually cause their own delays and they'll be the most motivated clients. They'll be desperate to get in. Their rent's ending. They've just moved to Dubai. They've only got another month in their accommodation. Whatever it is, the most motivated people will accidentally delay their own sales because they are slow to get documents together that they need for, say, a mortgage application, slow to get NOC documents back, or a seller is super, super keen, but I don't know, they went to pay their service charges and the system's not let them log in. Now they've had to go there. Now they're not registered. The wrong email's there. They won't allow them to pay it unless their email's right. It's endless. All of these small problems, and people will come to us in the sales progression role and be really concerned about these delays. But sometimes it can just be everybody wants to get this done, but we're not using all the tools that we've got to get this process to be as easy as possible.
You said it before about Dubai being so forward thinking in so many ways, and yet this, which is the way this sector has performed over the last 5, 6, 7 years, you'd think that we would be in a different position now. I think from the outside in, everyone thinks everything is hunky-dory, everything's just so, and it's seamless. And it's far from not, is it? Yeah. Especially with the after-sales process. I remember, who was it the other way? Someone done an NOC, which is the step before you transfer the property. The buyer and seller had to be in the NOC. It's like, the guy, they were sitting there for 1.5 hours, 2 hours. It was just, what is going on here?
It is crazy. And it's just not necessary. No. I just don't believe that it's necessary at all. But it's where we are. We are still there. And as you say, not many things have changed. I think it's been gradual process, and I do think that people think it's a lot further than it is, and I think that's where a lot of frustration comes, because it's this part of the process. You might think, well, my broker could do this, or why isn't my broker just doing this? And yeah, your broker could do this, but I don't know how long it would take you, and I think you'd probably end up having a phone call nearly every day of, oh, you won't believe it, we actually needed this before we did this, and now we need to go backwards, and now that we've paid that, we can't do. And I think that lack of experience would just be
I think what you will
really
find, yes, is that we had probably a few years, or I'd say 5, 6 years, maybe a little bit longer, where people are saying, what does sales progression do? What's their role? Why am I paying X, Y, and Z for this service when I'm paying my broker 2% or whatever it may be? I think now, though, fast forward 5, 6 years, people now see the complete value in it, just because there are so many hurdles. Let's forget about, before you even start about logistics, in some cases you've got 4 people who are within the transaction, 2 buyers and 2 sellers. 9 times out of 10, someone's traveling. It takes between, let's say, 2 to 4 months for the property to transfer.
Yeah.
And there's always bumps in the road. And now I think people are starting to become wise. Right, I need this in place.
Yeah, and I think people also don't realise how much goes in behind it. So you might have like one point of contact, but actually and my role's changed over the years as well, doing this job and managing the team. And part of what I do in my day-to-day is actually just look at ways of improving the team on an operational level with what we've got outside of Dubai and what we have here. And one of those things is there'll be multiple people working on your case. So there'll be case progressors in the office as well as your sales progression officer. And then we have 2 roles, their entire role. And I think this just tells you where the process is. Their entire role is just collecting documents, chasing up NOCs, following up liability letters, picking up liability letters, running them across town. That's their whole role. We have 2 full-time roles doing that. They're amazing, the girls that do it, by the way. I don't know how they get through as much as they do in the day. But that's where we are, as not only as a business operation, but where the market is in terms of it still has that many inefficiencies. We need people physically out there following things up. So when things are delayed, which happens, there are so many different parties involved in this, in each sale. You might think, well, I don't know if I needed that sales progression service. There are so many people working on that case for you. And honestly, operationally, for what we charge for it, I don't think there's many companies that can actually turn that into, yes, it has a commercial value, but that's not what it's there for. Ultimately, everybody is interested in that deal of getting it over the line. And the way that we have everybody set up here is that there's nobody that isn't motivated to do that. And that's important.
Even though I said that people are now starting to become wise to it, where do you think people underestimate the value? Is it overseas investors or overseas buyers, or?
Honestly, it's anyone. And I think some of our biggest clients probably understand the service the most. And I think that tells you what you kind of need to know, that they will want to deal with the same people and that they will say, look, so-and-so handles all my stuff. I just kind of turn up. And I think one of the things people do make the mistake of doing was when you are a nervous buyer is trying to understand too much. I think too much information can be overwhelming and difficult. So I think that honestly, it's for everybody, because you need to have some experience with this. Things that you will go to sit with somebody in a developer's office and they will tell you something and it is just so far from what you actually need to do. And I think you could be really misadvised and misguided, and it'll just cost you time. Ultimately, it'll cost you time in your deal.
So do you think the more, like you said then, the more experienced investors and buyers, they're becoming probably they want it.
Well,
whereas your first time buyers,
valuable.
Yeah.
It's so valuable to them because it's time off their desk. They have their own jobs. You know, you'll have windows where I'll occasionally have clients who have a 15-minute window to sign. You know, that's literally all the time that I have from them that day. It's a priority. It's their family home. But at the same time, that's all I've got. And that's all you've got to work with. So it has to be, you have to let them do their job. You have to let them use their experience and not be too focused on it, because I think just focus on your own job, whatever you've got going on, and let them kind of roll with what process they know best.
How do you think your roles evolved over the last 6 or 7 years?
It's changed a lot, to be honest. I'd say that I had taken a much higher level view over deals. Of course, issues will always come my way, but I'm not involved in the day-to-day, the smaller kind of issues. While I've evolved, so has the team. So the seniors in the team are more experienced than they were. They take a lot of that on board themselves as well. I honestly defy you to find a better team in this office, by the way. Like they look after each other and they will help each other, and they will really focus on anybody that needs help in any situation. They'll try and resolve it themselves.
Jess, I think it's probably, I know brokering is listen, it's such a hard job. I think sales progression is probably the hardest job within our business. I think it's probably the most undervalued as well at times.
100%.
It's a thankless task. People expect it to be done on a specific time. If there's a transfer date, people expect it to be on that time. It generally isn't, because of, like you say, whether it be logistics or whether it be bumps in the road or documents that are not in a file. But I just think it's a thankless task, and it is such a hard job. And since we set up internally, it's evolved and grown. Listen, it's down to you. And I always say you're like my right-hand woman, because like you say, without you and your team, you don't get paid. That's the thing. We do not get paid.
Yeah,
and the things that implement, the governments implement, the land department, the developers, it's changing every 2 minutes. And you've got to be, like you say, something might change overnight. Something might, let's say, from the land department fee from 2% to 4%, and that was a week lead-in period to whatever. There's been so many changes overnight. And the guys just adapt.
Yeah, you have to be super adaptable with it. And like you say, I think it is probably the most thankless job. I think the guys, what people don't see and what people don't realize is that you might have, they care so much about deals, and you will have, agents chasing you, buyers, sellers chasing you. Ultimately, you're waiting for something from a developer that you actually can't control totally. So you might be up at 2:00 in the morning, dreaming about your NOC. You're the first person at the door at DAMAC at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning, banging the door down for your NOC. And, you'll call the client, it's not ready, but it'll all be your fault. And having to take that can be so relentless. And I think people really underestimate what actually goes, the efforts and the lengths that people actually go to try and get everything done. I think if anything, it's completely underestimated.
Without the usual things you see in the media, why do you think people are relocating en masse like they are? Obviously, we've seen it today. I think it's 1,000 people per day that are coming into country. And you said before that you've got a few friends that are selling the business, completely bringing the family to Dubai, setting up shop, not even setting up shop yet, but just completely selling what they've got and moving to Dubai. Why do you think people are wanting a piece of this at the minute?
I know this has probably been covered so much, but I've really noticed a massive difference over the last even couple of months. Like I was saying to you, I keep getting people put in touch with me. I think, to be honest, because I've been here so long, I've been at Allsop 12 years, but I don't sell property. So I have such an overview of everything that really goes on without actually going, but this is the community that I sell in. And having been here for quite a while, I can kind of point people in the right direction. But people are coming to me and every one of their situations has been exactly the same. And I'm talking about maybe like 8-10 people in the last 6 weeks. But that's just me. If you think of all of the other people that are being contacted, and every one of their situations is exactly the same, and they are all exiting businesses.
Do you mean from a family point of view or from a commercial point of view?
And commercial. So nobody is moving because their jobs have been relocated here that I've met. They have all been selling businesses for tens of millions of pounds, and they want to do it in the most tax efficient way. And that is what every one of them has said to me. And it's really interesting because it's not something I've seen before. People used to come for a lifestyle, or they would come, okay, there's not really many prospects. What am I really doing? Or they're very young and they're just starting out. Now you're seeing a massive insurgence of extremely successful people moving here. And I think they're disenchanted, mostly with where they are, and they're just not willing to part with the money that it's going to cost them in tax to exit their businesses where they are.
Do you think, just from your role and from your team's role, do you find these guys they understand what it takes? Let's say they come over and they want to buy a house. They completely understand what they need to do, the implications in terms of, let's say, shifting money from different countries and what have you. Do you find that's more taxing for guys that are just coming over as opposed to people who have been here for a while? Obviously, I don't know. It depends how you look at it. I think because they're probably used to a really terrible system themselves, it might actually not be that bad. But what we're doing, let's go back. We said at the start about having to be in specific places, like doing NOCs in person, doing transfers in person.
That surprises people.
Whereas back in the UK, let's say, you don't have to be there, but it just takes twice as long.
Yeah, true.
Which is what we want, but we don't want it to be twice as long.
Yeah, exactly. We've definitely got it in us to change some of that for sure. I don't know. Are they surprised? I think they're surprised at the time that things can take. I think they're surprised how time can run away with you. I think it's mega stressful moving like with your family and kids when you're already in a very successful position. I think it is stressful to move here. And I think it can take you by surprise that things aren't quite as straightforward as you think. And then some things will be. Some things will be so easy you can't believe it. You know, it's like a real kind of yin-yang situation with some things are perfectly easy and some things are a bit
How
arduous.
Do you think? Yeah, it is true. It's like you say, there's so many different things. Probably the most taxing things can probably be the easiest things. And then when you've got the small things that you think you just do overnight, it just takes so long. Yeah. Where do you think not your role, but sales progression, how do we improve it? With the exception of, I know AI is obviously a massive thing now in everything that we do.
Yeah.
How do we improve the process of sales progression, whether that be from your team, whether it be as a whole in Dubai? Where do you think we go with this?
Well, that's really where I see my role these days, really. It's, like I say to you, I'm not so involved in day-to-day deals. I definitely take a much broader view over the whole department. And actually, I'm always just really looking in the back end of things. So, I mean, you think about sales progression as probably your back office anyway. And then I go one step further and go, okay, so what is underneath this? So for me, it's always like driving. I mean, we introduced a restructure a couple of years ago. Now I'm looking at, okay, where do I take this next? And I can't quite say where I'm going with it, just announcing it just yet. But I think there's a lot that we can use tech-wise. I think that while we can talk about what's happening on the outside with processes all day long, and I'd love to consult with them at some point on it, what we can control is within our business. And that's what I love to look at. How does the operation actually look like in the next 6 months? What do I want it to look like by the end of the year? And for me, it's definitely about making things as easy as possible to communicate within the team.
But are you hamstrung with what you can do in terms of externally?
I go as far as I possibly can. Like, I will take it as far as we can in terms of how efficient we can be. But ultimately, we are going to get to the point where we're just like, okay, well, this is the process and I can't change that just yet. I
think what we do have though, Jess, is we have such a good relationship with the land departments. If you go back to COVID, when we had, I don't know, we had hundreds.
Don't take me back to COVID, Mark.
But if you remember.
I don't want to remember.
I think we had, what did we have? I don't even know how many cases we had in the pipeline. And we said, listen, we're locked down. We've been locked down for two weeks. We can't do NOCs. We can't transfer. everything stopped.
And can you imagine, like, that's my job. I look after the company's pipeline. That is my sole responsibility here. Obviously we have a client obligation, but as a business operation, I sit here with everything that you put on that board. It sits with me until it actually becomes transferred into money in your wages.
Do you think of that? Because when you put it like that,
that's what I do.
That's a massive, massive
and that's what responsibility. I'm here to do. So when you then say to me, "Oh, land department's closed," I'm like, "What do you mean? What do you mean? I can't do what I'm here to do?" And then it was, of course, well, how do I contain what is in here now? Like, what angle do we have to look at here?
But if you do remember, when we were speaking to them, we said, "Listen, what do we do?" And I think I've said this before.
We tried everything. There was no stone unturned.
But don't forget, like you said, we done in a way we were doing remote transfers, and that's obviously people were waiting for the money for sometimes weeks on end. Bad. But we do have a good relationship. But there's only so much that we can do.
Yeah.
And we keep banging the drum. It's just listen.
You just got to keep going.
Yeah.
You just have to keep on, like, banging that drum, talking the narrative, where we can go with this. Because for me, I get really frustrated about it because I love what I do. And I think that real estate has evolved so much in Dubai, like massively. When I look at even just like how social media is used and how visible agents are and how glamorous everybody is now. And like, people aren't wearing like suits and doing viewing tours anymore. Like everything has really, really changed. The quality of the properties, they've been renovated. They've been completely gutted and redone. It's a totally different field. And everything is so shiny and so interesting for people to look at. And then it comes to this part of the process and it hasn't really changed. And it's something that all of the elements are there that we can go forward and we can drive this forward. Everything is there. We just need to piece it all together.
When you think about it, like you've probably got, what was the ratio? I think last month it was investors, I believe it was 40% and end user was 60%. It's probably the biggest investment anyone is going to have to do.
Yeah.
And to spend what they spend on sales progression as opposed to what they're spending on their house, it's an absolute no-brainer. And especially when you've got the likes of yourself, who's been doing a job for 8 years now in sales progression, you've got a number of the team. I think we've got 25 in the team now, just that right? Mm-hmm. We've got 13 sales progressors, including you. And I think of them, 50% have been with the business for over 6 or 7 years.
Yeah, I think in terms of like staff retention and in this industry, my team is like, I honestly don't think you'll find a team more experienced and more established with each other.
When you think about it, you think of some law firms, don't have that amount of people.
No, they won't. I remember doing my mortgage in the UK and I was getting really frustrated because they were taking so long to get back to me. And one of the mortgage brokers in here came over. He said, "Jess, just to put this into some kind of perspective with what you're dealing with, your team in front of you now will be bigger than that entire building society. Just give them a break." And I thought, okay, I get it now. Sorry.
But it's true. And that's just, it's going to continue, I think.
Yeah.
I know, like I say, AI isn't making a massive impact, but I think you said it before, we have to be hands-on. People want the hand held a lot of the times. I know me and you have a bit of a disagreement every now and again.
Don't bring that up.
No,
I wasn't going to fall out with you on a podcast.
But people want answers straight away, don't they? And it's not, listen, it's not like anywhere else in the world. Again, I go back to the UK. I never got a response. I bought a house in the UK and never got a response for like 3 weeks. I was literally bombarding with calls, but he just didn't want to answer my calls.
But I think that can be achievable. You have to use the tech. I don't think it's realistic that people are going to be able to have that instant messaging service with you. It's just not what the role is. It's a complete misconception.
What things, Jess, do you think buyers and sellers need to look out for when they're buying a property? What things would you advise them on before they even start going on viewing? What would you say to them because obviously there's a lot of hurdles that they have to jump over. What would you advise them?
I think buyers, just get your ducks in a row with your money.
Yeah.
This seems so obvious, but this will take you longer than you expect. I recently bought an investment flat and I actually didn't take any of my own advice. And I think I put myself into like a 4 or 5 week MOU, but I just thought, no, it has to be done. Somehow I'll move heaven and earth to do it. Don't put yourself in that situation because it is stressful and that transfer date is important. The end date on your contract is serious. You have to have done everything that you possibly can to meet that. So I think whether you're a cash buyer, where is the money coming from? Is it going to have to go through a few different central banks? Is that going to take longer than you think? Is it coming from a trust? Is it a family trust? Is it coming from shares? How long is this actually going to take? Don't just leave that till the last minute. If you're buying with a mortgage, you've got to get a pre-approval. It's completely insane if you don't have a pre-approval. You might have to close a couple of credit cards. You might have to bring down a car loan. You might not be eligible for the amount that you think that you're eligible for. You just don't know until you know. So just don't go out there thinking, okay, my budget's 5 million. It might be 3. There's just no point in getting yourself into it. So get somebody to pre-approve you. We obviously have in-house mortgages. Any of the guys can help you with that. And it's not an arduous process, but you do need to have that idea. If you're selling, I would definitely say, especially if it's a villa that you've done any kind of modifications to, which is something that people have done a lot of now, even if there was modifications before you bought it, get down to your developer and ask them, have I got all of the right approvals? If I don't, how do I get them? Do I need your NOC? Do I need DDA, which is what they refer to municipality now? Get those things in order. These can add weeks, and I mean 6-8 weeks onto processes, and they're expensive. So don't just sort of go into it. I would just be, it's age old, just be organized, but think about all those little things. Don't leave yourself up to the last minute. I'm that person.
No, but listen, what people do expect, people just think that, right, I've got money, it's coming from the UK, I'm going to bring it over, and then everything will be done in.
Where did it come from? Where's your bank account?
Yeah.
Bank account's not open. Oh, I can't come over yet because I haven't got my visa through. It's just get everything in order, really.
How do you see it evolving over the next 3 to 5 years?
I think it's going to be really interesting, and I think we're going to be at the forefront of it, to be honest. I think we're going to really make some big changes in the next couple of years. I think that tech will massively advance. We just need to implement it. But I think there's a lot of exciting stuff to come.
I think with sales progression, I think we're going to see, and we've seen it over the last 4 or 5 years, we're going to see a lot more of us, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think we're going to see a lot more people, like I say, people see the value in it. Even though that, like I said before, even though that's happening now more and more, there's more credibility in sales progression.
Yeah.
The amount of times that I've seen you advising people who are not even buying from us.
Yeah.
People that are calling you or asking you to go on conferences or whatever it might be to advise exactly what the process is. Even taking advice of what you think the next step should be. I think this arm of any real estate business is going to, I honestly do think it's going to be at the forefront. And like you say, with AI, with tech, over the next, not even the next year, actually, I think it's going to like the next 6 months.
Yeah.
You're going to see massive changes.
I think it will accelerate, and I think it has to. But apart from anything else, with all of the people that are coming in here, comes new ideas, new businesses, things that we aren't doing currently, and people will start to see it. For me, as long as we are moving away from what is currently acceptable as sales progression or conveyancing in other countries, and to an extent here, as long as we're not accepting that this is how it is and it's done like this because it is, as long as we're not saying that's okay and we're moving this forward and when we can have that open dialogue with the land department, I'm okay with that, as long as there's progress.
Does that frustrate you sometimes when we're banging down the doors?
Yeah.
I think sometimes, they, even though they do to a certain extent, I think the powers that be at the developers at Dubai Land, because we're doing this every single day. And we're seeing the issues, we're seeing the problems, the frustrations with buyers and sellers. And it's not because, yes, okay, we are a business and it is an arm to the business, but it's to make this process a lot more streamlined.
Yeah.
To dilute the amount of time it's taken for a process, for a transfer to happen. I think, what are we at now? I think our average is
66 days.
Is it 66 days?
It's not bad.
It's not bad at all.
Yeah.
And what would you say the difference in cash to finance deals?
It can be quite a big difference, to be honest. I mean, if you get the right developer, money's all on the table, you can do a cash to cash in a couple of days. There's no reason you can't. It's more just like clearing through any kind of compliance or money raising issues that you'd have to do. So that bit is easy. Finance to finance. If you have finance to finance blocking, it's long, to be honest. It can be an easily, I think we have a 12-week MOU.
Yeah.
You can end up into it, no problem. It's just, there's a lot of process to be done.
And what about your role? How do you see your role evolving over the next?
Well, I think organically, it's actually become a lot of me going into the operation of the team. And I see that continuing, to be honest. Yes, I'm involved in deals, and I do still work with some clients, work with some of the private office clients.
Mm-hmm.
So I do some sales progression. You know, the team will laugh at me when they see me in a trustee office. She's on the tools today. And I will still do some sales progression, but I definitely see the looking more into the like kind of operation of it, which is what I do now, to be honest.
Jess,
driving that forward.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
If you have any sales progression questions or you want to consult Jess over purchasing a property, then please feel free to get in touch. But Jess, thank you very much for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for letting me loose on the pod.
Thank you.